Gentlemen, I am pain.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Tour de Cons, your podcast all about conventions. The who, the what, the when, the where, and why, and we all know why because they're fun. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson, and joining me tonight is one of my good friends. We have been friends longer than either one of us want to admit. Ken Schaefer. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing great, Jesse.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, normally Ken and I, when we do talk, it's about Doctor Who. But today we are talking of one of Ken's great loves. Coming up in May in Dallas is I think this is the 13th?
Yes, this will be the 13th.
Yeah, the 13th Texas Frightmare weekend. The Southwest premier horror convention. And it's coming up in May 4th, 5th, and 6th at the Hyatt Regency at the DFW Airport. And Ken has gone, if not every year, most years, correct?
Most years. I missed a couple there, but have been going real regularly now that Parker has an interest in it as well. So went often in the very beginning when I went with Michael.
Yeah.
And then there was a period kind of in the middle where I really didn't feel like going just by myself and wandering around. That seems kind of lame.
Yeah.
But then Parker turned 16, and he and I do movie night every Saturday night anyway. And so his birthday is right then in the beginning of May. So we usually go now to Texas Frightmare weekend for his birthday.
Which is nice. So we're going to talk a little bit about past Texas Frightmare weekends, and also this coming show. But I want to start out with, Ken, tell me a little of your background. I know this, but our listeners don't. What's your horror cred?
I've been a fan of horror and science fiction since I can remember, and that's, while not quite 60 years, is pretty darn close. The very first Christmas present that I remember getting was a set of Universal Monster playing cards. And although I was thrilled to get them, when nighttime rolled around, I was scared of them, and we had to keep them in a closet. I remember distinctly building the Frankenstein and Dracula plastic models in the 60s. And my dad and I used to watch the classic horror movies and classic science fiction stuff on an independent TV channel in Indianapolis in the 60s. So been a fan of horror and science fiction from the very beginning.
Do you have a favorite Universal monster?
I would say that probably Frankenstein is my favorite of the classic ones, although the Wolfman would be a close second, because I think I like them better because they're sympathetic characters.
Yes.
There's nothing sympathetic about Dracula. He's just an evil guy. And the Creature from the Black Lagoon, who usually rounds out the series of original Universal monsters, is sort of sympathetic, but not really, because he's not really even human. But both Frankenstein and the Wolfman are monsters in the truest sense, and yet you kind of feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is, a couple of years ago, how many of the We've Got This podcast, that debates, talked who was the best, classic movie monster, and I believe they did decide on Frankenstein. So yeah, there's just a lot to be said for there. I remember those models too, and how cool they looked. And my family was not a big horror fans. We did not, the closest I got growing up was Abbott and Costello and meeting the horror movie,
Hmm. Yes,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and so loved that take on them, that with this, wonderful humor, but built into that. So you started out very young. I take it you've continued that bug.
Yeah. I've I've watched horror movies. I've spent more money in the old days. When you had to go to theaters, I spent way more money than I should have in the theaters. And then when VHS tapes came out, then it really blew up. I am a collector by very nature, as my parents are collectors, and so when VHS tapes came out, I spent $600 on the highest end VHS player I could get and bought tapes of movies back when they were $60 a pop, before the rental industry finally came in and knocked those prices down. And now of course, I have a collection of almost 5,500 DVDs. So yeah, you could say um, I've continued with it, and then kind of side by side with that is my love of bad movies. I can remember discovering Mystery Science Theater when I was in the Navy in Charleston, watching it on Comedy Central back when there was a Comedy Central, and it that really revitalized my love of the really old and kind of cheesy movies, the horror at Party Beach line of movies. And so now, of course, I own every Mystery Science Theater that was ever done, and buy them from Riff Tracks and as the new ones come out. So
Yeah, and you are definitely not a movie snob. And I mean that in both ways. You will embrace a mainstream horror movie or a
sure.
mainstream science fiction movie. I mean, you won't go. If it's over $10,000 budget, it must be crap. I mean, but you also love the low budgets and the kind of movies that people make, on a very slim budget using their friends and whatever, guerrilla warfare or, locations they can find.
And that is one of the great things about Texas Frightmare Weekend, of course, is that you get to meet a lot of these people because lots of the small independent companies come, and they're selling their movies there at a table. If they've got a new one, maybe they've got a showing of it on there, and so you get to meet all the actors and everything. And that's really one of the key things for me, is meeting the people that actually do it. But we'll get more into that here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because when we talked about doing this, and Ken and I have worked together twice, and we have stayed friends even though we don't work at the same company now, and on, I would say, 40 to 45 weeks out of the year, we meet for lunch and just catch up and talk. And it is truly, he's a dear friend. And when I was talking about doing this, he said, one of the things I love so much about TFW is that it isn't just actors. It is, directors and producers and sound people and just everyone, the crew behind this, you can meet and talk and
distributors too. There's several small distribution companies that kind of look for the independent people, and they don't have a ton of money either, but they show up at the shows, and for both reasons, to move their product and to look for new people whose product they want to move, and the up and coming ones, the companies that have just kickstarted themselves into existence and are looking to move some product. It's everything, and so there's going to be somebody there that will interest you, unless you just really hate everything about movies and horror.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in just a minute. I did want to bring up that um, Ken was the first person I knew that, which has become very fashionable, about cutting the cord and binge watching. Ken has, and now then that's pretty standard. But at the time, many years ago, Ken would always be a year late. We'd be talking about something, and we'd go, "Oh, I have to get the DVD set," because then we could talk about it.
Yeah, I haven't watched a network television show in well over 13 years at this point. I only watch stuff on DVD and Blu-ray, just because commercials drive me insane. They ruin the pacing. They just, there's nothing good you can say about them. I'd much rather pays my money and watch stuff uninterrupted. So yeah,
Yes.
I was a trendsetter in cutting the cord 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Now I think about half of everybody is. So
Well, I laughed because my wife Linda and I had just watched. We went through the second season, of The Crown, which is not something Ken would have any interest in watching. And that's another thing that we love talking about, are the two things that we have a mutual subset, but we also, our Venn diagram on the other ends are things that Ken, at sometimes, for a while there, he did a blog where he would talk about every movie he watched. He sees one or two movies a night, depending on a commentary. And he would say, "And you, dear Jesse, do not want to watch this movie." But she said that she has reached the point where she just, enjoys binging more. And even with our DVR, she will let, and I'm doing that too, I will let 7 or 8 episodes queue up in the DVR. Like as I'm we're recording this today, I've been binging The Gifted, the Fox show that's kind of set in the X-Men universe, and I'm binging it just because I enjoy that. Even though there is still the commercials and you have to skip them, but you still get one show after another, and the story seems to flow a little better versus waiting every week to, waiting 7 days between shows.
yeah, Parker and I started Punisher last night, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because we finished Stranger Things, and so started on a Punisher. The pilot was pretty good, so
Okay, good.
expecting good things on that. Have you watched that yet?
No, I haven't yet. It's on the list. Now, yeah. So Parker is, you have 2 sons, and Parker's your youngest son.
Yes.
And he made you and I both very proud when he started going, "Hey, I think I like this Doctor Who thing." And he started when it was on Netflix, just going over the modern era over and over and over again. And you guys have done a pretty cool father and son bonding thing. You mentioned Saturday movie. Tell me a little about that.
So we watch an episode of a couple of shows on Netflix, and then we have watched all of the Doctor Who's from the very beginning, from the 1966 Unearthly Child. And last night we did Paul McGann's Fox movie. And so next week we will actually start the new series.
Nice.
And it's been a real interesting ride. It's been an education for Parker because, of course, kids nowadays tend to not pay as much attention to the really old stuff.
Yes.
And so and there is kind of, as you have discovered in watching some of the original series with Charles, there is a barrier to entry because things were different in the 60s on television, especially on British television. The pacing is much slower. Um, and of course, seeing even as little time as it's been since the 60s, seeing how people thought and acted back then can be uncomfortable at times. Um, and so there was an adjustment period, but it's been really great. You know, we've watched all of the Netflix Marvel stuff as it's come out. Uh, watched Dark. We're in the second, was it third season of Dark Matter, and it's a really it's a good time. I will be very sad when Parker finally moves out and that ends for us.
Absolutely. Uh, I I just thought of this. Do you think one of the reasons why horror has has stood out and lasted this, is such a classic part of a genre and a thing is that in a lot of ways horror is timeless?
Yes. I think that horror movies speak to people on a whole lot of different levels. You bring a lot of different things to it. If you've ever read Stephen King's nonfiction book, Dance Macabre, he talks a lot about why do we like horror? Why does such a wide-ranging group of people enjoy horror? And there's lots of different things we like watching one person overcome adversity and win. We like the thrill of being scared and the tenseness of it, and just all sorts of different things that different people like about horror movies. And so it speaks to a very large cross section of us, and I think that's why it's, I mean, one of the very first movies ever made. Thomas Edison made a version of Frankenstein. So horror has been with us since there's been moving pictures, and there were horror novels 200 years even before that. Um, it would not surprise me if we ever find stuff even older than that. It definitely speaks to lots of people, and so it's timeless in that regard.
Yeah, and another point I think that's really neat about not understanding, people, younger people or modern fans not embracing, some of the classic or not knowing anything old. I was going through the list and we're going to talk a little bit more, but one of the guests that they've got in this one is Brad Dourif.
Uh-huh.
And, nominated for Academy Award for Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep.
And I'm hoping to spend the time talking to him because he was in one of our favorite Babylon 5 episodes as one of the monks.
Yep.
And so I was, sometimes you find people that have this, as I'm going through the guest list, you see there are so many what you would call quote unquote mainstream actors that have done these, thrillers, horror, a little bit of these kind of films. And I think it's beautiful that they're embracing that and coming to this celebration of this genre, in Dallas coming in May.
I think this is the second time that he's been in here. Of course, he's coming primarily because he's the voice of Chucky.
Yes.
And so that's kind of his claim to fame for Texas Frightmare. But I mean, he was in Lord of the Rings. He's in lots and lots and lots of stuff. So yeah, he is an interesting person. And yeah, he's one of these actors that has comfortably accepted his place in it. It's always interesting to watch the evolution, so to speak, of actors and their acceptance of the roles and of people's feelings towards the roles. We hear a lot about how the original cast of Star Trek, initially when Star Trek was over, wanted to have nothing to do with the fans and everything. Thought that everybody was crazy, and then, over the years, although William Shatner still makes fun of them, they've been much more accepting of fandom and that. And Leonard Nimoy didn't want to have anything to do with anything that was even vaguely, science fiction-y, and yet the very last role that he did was in Fringe. So,
Yes.
he,
Well, yeah,
you
and
go through kind of an evolution of stuff until you finally go, it's fine. Everybody loves it. I get to act. I get paid. I'm just going to live with it.
well, you think about Will Wheaton, who you and I are both fans of his
Mhm.
writing. He talks about he wants to go and tell that young kid, "What are you doing? This was some of the best times of your life. Why did you think you had to do important things?"
It's always the way it is. I mean,
Yeah,
look at Eccleston,
yeah,
Balin on Doctor Who after only one season, and he's gone on to do lots of other television, some of which 2 or 3 seasons. How come he's not concerned about getting typecast as the quasi evil priest guy in that
yeah.
TV show? I don't get that, but
Well, as
probably because Doctor Who fans are like Star Trek fans in that they're pretty darn rabid.
yes, they are. So, as fans of me from other podcasts will know that it is impossible for me to go through a whole podcast without mentioning something to do with Bruce Springsteen. I just listened to Stephen Van Zandt on the WTF podcast,
Okay.
and he mentioned that he wants to do another TV show. And Mark Moran said, "Are you going to be a gangster?" And he says, "Well, that's what people seem to like me doing." And he says, and I don't understand being unhappy about typecasting. He said, first off, they have to like you enough to put you and watch enough that they put you in a role.
Yep.
So that means you've been successful in this role enough that they like you, they're a fan of you, and they want to see more of you. Tell me
That's a
how
very
that's a
mature. That's a very mature attitude.
Now, maybe it's because he's also a musician and he also is a record producer and he has all these other lies. But he
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, I don't see how that's a bad thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it takes a certain degree of maturity to realize, okay, I'm a big, beefy, scary guy. Um, I'm those are the part. No one's going to give me a role of this. I'm not going to get a role as the love interest on a Hallmark Channel movie.
Right.
I'm going to be the prison guard, or I'm going to be the gangster, and
Yes.
I'll bring what I can to that. But I mean, look at me. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not speaking as Ken Jiffer because the last
Yes.
thing I look like is anything like that.
No. So, Ken, you attended the very first
Yes, I
Texas
did.
Frightmare weekend. Tell me a little bit what you remember about it.
Oh man, I got really, really good memories of that. I should mention that the founder and uh, uh, the guy in charge of Texas Frightmare Weekend, before he started doing those conventions, he had a horror movie newsletter, basically, and it went out in email. And I was a subscriber to that, which is how I knew about the first one when he decided to put one together. And so Michael Cavatayo and I went. It was much, 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 much smaller. It was in I want to say the Carrollton Visitors Center or someplace like that. There was only 3 rooms, and that none of them were very big, and it was not particularly very crowded. But they'd done a great job of getting some really impressive people there for the very first one, and so I'm really glad I got to go because some of those people have passed on now at this point, and I wouldn't have gotten a chance to meet them. Um, in one room, sitting right beside another, bang, 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 was Joe Bob Briggs, who signed my copy of Profoundly Disturbing, and he and I talked for several minutes about that. Betsy Palmer, who was the mother in the original uh, Friday the 13th, and she signed a picture for me and did her uh, very, very well known and loved among horses, "Kill her, mommy, kill her," which was pretty great. And then sitting right next to them was the godfather of gore, Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Wow.
We got to talk to him for I would say 10 or 15 minutes. There wasn't anybody else in the room. Nobody else had come during that time. And so he signed several of my DVDs, and we talked about, how things have changed and how things have gone the same. And he was talking about getting together to make a sequel to a couple of his movies. And he did, in fact, after that, make a couple, kind of get back into it again, and made a couple more movies before he passed. And just having the opportunity to stand there and talk with these people without the crush of this huge line. As if there's anything that's kind of sad about it now, it's become so big, and they have all these big ticket people that come, that if you want to talk to say to Brad Dourif or Tobin Bell, who's going to be there also, there's going to be a huge line to talk to him, and you're not going to get a chance to talk for 10 or 15 minutes with him. That's another one of the reasons why I really like the independent folks, because there's not big lines to see the guy that just made a Western zombie movie for $10,000 that you've never ever heard of. But talking to him about making it, and how did he find the place, and how much trouble was it, and they love to talk about that kind of stuff, and they'll just chat you right up and tell you it's an education in filmmaking right there to be had. So
Yeah, and I think that's really very cool. I have the same experience. I go to Dragon Con most years, and there's this room filled with celebrities, and it never fails. Some of them have lines and some of them don't. And sometimes you can have the best discussion with someone, especially if you go and talk to them. Here's my little hint. Find something that is not, the most highlighted thing on their IMDb, and
exactly.
And share something truly that,
I think I'm the one that told you to do that.
Yes, you are.
That's what I've always done. Is
yes.
I look through my movie collection and I find something that not everybody else is going to have.
Yes.
For instance, a number of years ago, Jeffrey Combs was there, and Jeffrey Combs, of course, has been in lots and lots of movies, but he's probably best known as playing the Reanimator. Oh, I had a brand new. I had pre-booked it, and it came the day before. Special edition of the Reanimator, and so I brought that. He had never seen it. It was that new, so he was like looking at it, because it came with a syringe full of glowing green liquid, and it's a pretty spiffy box set. I can actually see it from where I'm sitting here.
Yeah,
and so he was really thrilled to see that, because he had never seen it before. And I almost always do that. I will go through and I will find, something relatively obscure that I have seen and enjoyed, and then I take that and talk to them, and boy, they sure love that.
Yeah, I was. It is really interesting when you can do that and talk to someone. That chance that to share the little bit different, and it's easy to find someone that's going to talk about some of their Catherine Hicks, Seventh Heaven, or her part in Child's Play she's going to be on. Of course, I want to talk to her about the whales on Star Trek 4, but she's probably tired of talking about that. But she may not be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've been nice enough to kind of have that chance to talk, and so that's kind of good. Any other highlights that you remembered over the years of going to people you've gotten to meet and special, things signed or just the ability to share with people?
I have a DVD that is Hellraiser 1 and 2 on in one box thing. And a number of years ago, Doug Bradley, who is Pinhead, and Ashley Lawrence, who is the heroine of those first two movies, shared a table. So they were sitting at the table together, and so they both signed, and they signed it basically in character.
Wow.
It was, and and Bradley has got to be the nicest guy. He's just soft spoken, just the nicest guy, and yet he plays this horrible this evil creature. But those two sitting together at a table and signing stuff together, kind of in tandem, I thought was particularly cool.
Yeah, that's kind of special. Um, do you still feel that people want to take the time to talk to their fans on this convention? I get the feeling that they do. That people are
Yes.
much more. This is, this is really not just there to make a lot of money. This is, I really want to enjoy the celebration of this wonderful genre.
Um, I, I haven't spoken to any of the real highbrow ticket people. I know that Tobin Bell was there last year, and I didn't stand in line to talk to him. Malcolm McDowell was here last year, and he's going to be here again this year, and I didn't stand in line for them. So I can't speak to how the real big budget, big ticket people feel about it. But certainly once you step down one level, all of the guys who, the half a dozen people who have played Jason Voorhees over the years, they're all very approachable and really enjoy being with their fans and having pictures taken with their fans and have a good time. The lady who plays the Vasquez in Aliens,
Yes.
she was just a treat. And she had like nobody at her table. Probably because she doesn't look like what she looked like in the movie. So, if you didn't, like I do, remember these kinds of things, you might not know. But she was just a lot of fun to talk to about aliens and other things. I enjoy talking with people that are the character actors, like Lynn Shaw, who's always playing a mom or a grandma in stuff. And she just loves making horror movies and being the crazy psycho grandma. And she's great at it. And she's just as nice as she could be. At the first one, I met Lloyd Kaufman, which was pretty wild because, he's a pretty crazy guy. And he was completely approachable, just talking with the fans, having a good time. What did you like? What didn't you like? What didn't you like about the ones you didn't like? Just really keeping his finger on the pulse of stuff. And like Charles Band. Okay, Charles Band's made 200 movies, but he's been here for like the last 3 or 4, and I've spoken to him. He remembers me from time to time now. And talks to me and like, hey, what have you liked that we've done here recently? What did you think worked? What didn't work? Are you watching the Evil Bong movies? Do you like those? It's really interesting to talk to these people and to, actually have them ask you, what do you like? What don't you like? What didn't work? Why don't you think it worked? That's about 3/4 of why I love going.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing, especially, you've not only do you embrace B movies and horror movies, but you also are quick to critique commentaries where, okay, if you're just going to go, yep, that's what we did, there's not much purpose. While versus if if you really get into the, yeah, um,
This
and
was not what we. This is not what we meant to do. We lost this site. We had to do this.
yes,
Boy, this actor or actress just was not with us this day. The real stuff. What makes it easy and hard
yes,
to make a movie like that? If you're just going to sit there and tell me that everybody was great and it was a wonderful time and y'all just sat around and sang "Kumbaya" the whole production, there's nothing to learn there. But to listen and find out, uh, how they actually did it, and the guys that are honest enough to go, yeah, this scene just does not work, and I knew I wanted to get this other shot to make it work, and we just couldn't. We lost the light, and that's where you get an education, and that's where I find a lot of my enjoyment.
absolutely. All right, so real quick reminder: we are talking about Texas Frightmare Weekend. It is coming up this year on May 4th, 5th, and 6th. Obviously 2018, in case you're listening to this several years ago and you missed it, several years from now. Friday from 6 to 11, Saturday 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday. It's at the Hyatt Regency at DFW. Advanced tickets are on sale. They will be going up in price shortly.
Yeah, tomorrow.
So by the time you hear this, it will probably have gone up. But they have some pretty good deals on tickets. Where if you pre-order and try to go for all few days, a weekend pass runs anywhere from $55 to $79. So we'll have a link in the show. All right, Ken, who are you excited about seeing this year?
So this year there are three that I think I'm actually going to make the effort to try to see, even though they're bigger actors, just because I think it's really exciting that they're going to be there. The first one, and the one I'm most interested in talking to, and I hope the line isn't super long for him, is Clive Barker.
Yes.
Because he represents a whole lot of stuff. He's a painter, he's an artist, he's a writer, and he's a director, and is very creative guy, a very twisted, his visions are very twisted, and I love everything he does, and so I really hope I can get a chance to talk to him. And Tobin Bell, of course, the guy who plays Jigsaw, and he's in a lot of other stuff. I will probably pull something more obscure for him, hopefully. And then finally, Ron Perlman is going to be there. Now, who does not love Ron Perlman? This guy's just an awesome actor. Everything I've ever heard is that he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's done some from the most obscure roles in medieval thrillers to, of course, he was Hellboy. And I wonder, if I do get a chance to talk to him, I wonder, they're rebooting Hellboy and he's not going to be in it. And I wonder how he feels about that. Is he real possessive of that role, or is he like, yeah, I did it, but it's time for somebody else to do it? It'll be interesting to see which way he falls on that. Because sometimes the actors are happy for the reboot, and God bless them, good luck. And other times they're like, those idiots, they're going to ruin it. So,
Yeah, he's going to be there Saturday and Sunday only. Quest for Fire, Sons of Anarchy. He had a really nice, fun part in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yes.
The very successful TV show Beauty and the Beast. He has this. I mean, they made jokes, right, that for the longest time, he never showed his face in a movie. He was always under heavy makeup. He seems to be someone that would be a lot of fun to meet. Yeah.
He's good in the commentaries,
Yeah.
He's like Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell sounds like he'd be so much fun because he's so great in the commentaries, I want Kurt Russell and John Carpenter sitting at a table together because, man, when they sit down and do commentaries together for like Escape from New York or something, they just have so much fun during that commentary. It just sounds like it'd be great to see them together at a table signing stuff. I can see them teasing each other and stuff the whole time.
Both Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, both gone now, used to, when they critiqued movies, said if the director and the star would be more entertaining just listening to him have a conversation than the movie, it's a bad movie. And I think about that with them. Yeah, that would be a great panel. I'm looking forward to Steven Weber, just because he has been such a diverse career. I mean, obviously, the sitcom Wings, but he's been in, he did The Shining, Tales from the Crypt, Crawl Space. He was in Studio 60, the Aaron Sorkin show, playing kind of the network executive that was kind of a jerk, but ended up not being as a big a jerk. He's just been someone that has had this very wide career. And so I think he will be interesting if he does a panel or get a chance to talk to him. I think he would be very cool to talk about. Yeah. And then the other, Ethan Embry, from, The Walking Dead, Devil's Candy, House Across the Street. I remember him first in The Thing You Do. He played one of the drummers, but he also, in this Showtime show called Brotherhood, which was kind of a Sopranos light, he played a cop that was really good in that. So I'm excited about him. Fiona Dourif is in Dirk Gently, in the
yes.
And she's really good. She's really good in that. She's had a very long career. I think she'd be interesting to talk to as well. And so I just think, I know they're doing a celebration of Chucky, so there'll be a lot. They have a lot of people, from Christine Elise, for embarrassing. I first recognized her from Beverly Hills 90210.
Oh, don't admit that.
I know. I should not say that, but right. Just so this is going to be a lot of fun. Anyone else you're thinking that you, as you look through the list, that you go, this could be interesting?
I wonder if Fiona's going to be at the same table with her dad.
Yeah,
that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
To have them two together. And looking at it, have they actually done anything together?
I don't know.
I'm scrolling through here real fast because I hadn't realized that they were both going to be there.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like she was in Deadwood.
Yes. I saw that too. There's
She was
actually
one
been
of the whores in Deadwood.
Yes.
That's awesome.
She, a couple people have been Deadwood connections on here. It looks like Darren Lynn Bozeman, who from writer, director, producer, Mother's Day, Saw 2 and 4, Tales of Hollywood, Halloween. You were talking about filmmakers. I think that's kind of cool too, that you do get people from behind the scenes to share, not just the frontline people.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I really am excited. I'm hoping to get Michael on the show to talk about some of his experiences too. I think this is going to be a great weekend. I think
he goes all 3 days and spends the nights in the hotel. He buys the high end ticket with all the parties and after hours and meals where you get to eat with the people and all of that. And he and his wife spend the whole weekend at it. I can't do that anymore. Parker and I go on Saturday, and by late Saturday afternoon, I am exhausted and have to come home and rest.
So to put you on the spot, are there any vendors that you always enjoy meeting with? You mentioned there are, but I don't know if you remember right offhand.
Well, yeah, like Charlie Band is always there. So everything from Full Moon is there. Vinegar Syndrome, which is one of the companies that does a restore and re-release of old movies. Not necessarily all horror. They're always there. And Michael and I both kicked in money to get that company started because their first project was they restored 3 movies that had been lost of Herschel Gordon Lewis's. And by them doing that, I can now actually say that I own every movie that Herschel Gordon Lewis ever put out. Because the final three that we were missing, Vinegar Syndrome found a copy and spent a lot of time and money to restore them because they were not in very good shape, which is why the company's name is Vinegar Syndrome, because that's what happens to celluloid movies if they're not properly taken care of. If you open up the can and it smells of vinegar, then that celluloid is disintegrating and will literally fall apart if you're not really super careful. So I always enjoy seeing them and Severin. And I see that Arrow is going to be there. They do a lot of British stuff. My collection of the movies that were the video nasties, movies that Great Britain wouldn't allow to be released in the country in the late 80s and early 90s. I've got about 3/4 of them, and Arrow's doing a really good job of restoring those and re-releasing them. So I'll be interested to talk to those folks too.
How's the cosplay in the past?
Oh man, it gets more and more every year. Last year it was unbelievable. Lots of evil undead clowns, lots of characters from the movies. There's nothing like getting your picture taken with 3 different people all dressed up as Michael Myers. There's a lot of cosplay out there. I don't do that because I'm way too old for that. I just
right.
But if you're into cosplay, it will definitely be something that lots of people are doing there at the convention. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so bring your camera or your phone, as all of us have now, and because that's part of the fun. There are people that take cosplay very, very seriously. I am not judging. I'm flat saying, this is something they do.
It's a hobby. Yeah,
it is a hobby. It's the same way podcasting. Yes.
Yep.
And, and always be polite. Ask before you take a photo. But most of them are just thrilled and are glad you're wanting to do that. You can get your picture, take a picture of them, take a picture with them. It is absolutely wonderful. The website is www.texasfrightmareweekend.com. Once again, the dates are May 4th, 5th, and 6th, Friday night, most all day Saturday, and then till 5 on Sunday at the Hyatt Regency DFW Airport. Ken, this was a blast. Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday night before we all have to go to work tomorrow. Appreciate you. I know that's a horror movie.
Yeah, it is.
Do you
have a few more years? Just a few more years. I keep telling myself, I can make it. I can make it.
Absolutely. A couple advice, and then I want to get your advice too, if you have anything. A couple things I always like to remind people. One, focus on what you're doing when you go to a convention, not what you're not doing. If you spend the whole convention going, oh, I didn't get Clive Barker, you're going to ignore the fact that you had an opportunity to have a good time doing other things. So enjoy the moment, and I think that's good advice, period, in life, so that you can be that. One, second, bring the amount of money you want to spend. You will find many, many things that will speak to you, and you'll go, do I really need to pay the electric bill?
Yeah, there's lots and lots of vendors.
Yes.
Everything from T-shirts to paintings to there were some people that made these unbelievable alien-like things, like the alien from Aliens, coming out of eggs, coming out of other things. They had a skeleton of Aubrey, the plant from don't
feed me, Seymour.
That's the one. Yes. They had a huge one of that, but it was a skeleton of it, and it was just amazing. And obviously, you could just spend more money than you got. So yes, just bring what you can afford. It's
Yes.
better to have cash anyway, because although everybody can take credit cards, that way leads to problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just have a good time. Enjoy ourselves. Ken, any final advice you might have to share with our guests?
No, just, um, take your time. Don't worry about the crowds. Just pay attention to who they are. Uh, uh, don't skip the people if you don't recognize them right away, because there's lots of people doing lots of really great stuff out there, and uh, finding out the new things is as much fun as meeting people from the old stuff.
Oh, well said. Well said. Ken, if anyone wants to reach you, do you want your very seldom used Twitter handle?
Yeah, I am. I think just Dirkmaster
I
on
think so.
the Twitter. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course that's my Gmail address as well. I don't do any of the other social networks, because those are for younger people. But I do occasionally read Twitter. So if you want to DM me, I will see that.
Right. And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. And on Twitter, I had to add DFW because I was getting rude political tweets toward me. White lies do matter, Jesse Jackson. I'm like, no, I'm just obsessed with Bruce Springsteen and Doctor Who. So let us know what you think. This is the first of a series of episodes we've got about the Texas Frightmare weekend. I am going to be attending as a press member, so I'm hoping to get some interviews and to maybe record some panels. So let us know what you want to hear from. For now, be sure and sleep with the lights on. And remember the advice Stephen King gave his children. It was in the summer, and they were sleeping without the covers on. And he told them, no, no, no. You need to take the covers, put it underneath your feet to protect your ankles from the monster under your bed.
Growing up with him as a dad must have been a real treat.
Well, you notice they all became horror writers. So for now, we thank you guys. Stay safe. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula.
But does Dracula know it?